to see your jeans.
In those jeans.
Kellen, you're supposed to be muted.
I thought I was.
We're live. Okay, so thank you to anyone that's already tuning in. I think we're gonna go ahead and get started today. We're having a conversation with Real Life. Let's talk about it. It's a little, I don't know, talk group that my husband and I started so we could just have conversations about things that we either see in the news, stuff that's happening on social media, things that are happening in our county or our community, and just create like a platform where we can just kind of talk, because people don't really talk anymore. They do a lot of typing behind the scenes or a lot of commenting, but they don't really have like face-to-face discussions and conversations. So in partnership with the African American Community Partnership Group of Lake County, we are going to be discussing raising Black children in today's culture. And I have some friends that are going to be joining me for this discussion tonight. But before I introduce them, I'm going to go ahead and introduce my husband, Kellen Reeves. He and I, like I said, started Real Life Let's Talk About It. We also then have the Dowdies all the way from Seattle, Washington, joining us. Thank you for being in the middle of your day to have this conversation. I appreciate you. And all the way from Minneapolis, Minnesota, we have G and Michelle. And so this group of individuals were kind of chosen just because of different things that they've either done in their own communities, different work that they've been a part of, and the fact that they're raising Black children, right? So in some aspects, you'll hear them speaking about their actual children. And in other aspects, you'll hear them talking about places that they've worked and conversations that they've had. So we have a set of kind of questions, but we would love for you to comment below, send us your questions. We'll be able to see those and we'll discuss them openly here on this live. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Actually, if you guys could tell me how many kids you have and like boy, girl, that kind of thing, just so people have a good idea of where you're starting from and maybe their ages too.
We should start, I guess, right? So
Sure.
We have 6 boys. Yeah, 6 Black boys. 5, 10, 16, and 24.
Yeah, 2 sets of twins.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Don't all rush.
Yeah, I'll just jump in there. So with Dowdies, we got 3. We have a female who is 10, a female who is 7, and a 5-year-old boy.
All right. Hello. Me and Michelle have a 4-year-old boy. It should not have been that hard for me to think about how old my son is, and a 2-year-old girl. 2-year-old daughter.
All right. So, like I said, I reached out to these guys and said, hey, would you guys like to jump on and have a conversation about raising your Black children in today's culture? I was approached by the AACPG of Lake County. They were having discussions with like academics and professionals and therapists and, you know, various different like high level, large vocabulary discussions about this whole thing, right? And they're also interested in kind of what's the, I don't know, the real conversation that's being had amongst parents that are raising their children, like what's really being talked about? How are you really raising your kids? What are the things you're really saying? What do those conversations sound like? What's the outcome? You know, what do you walk away with feeling like I need to do better? I didn't do a really good job. do you look into anything? And so I was like, I think we could have this conversation and I think it would be fruitful. So you guys have already kind of shared the ages of your kids. My first question would be, given everything that's happening in today's society, right? We've had marches, you know, we've recently seen another shooting. So when you guys see those types of things, read those stories, how do you have these conversations with your kids and or youth that you've worked with? I'm gonna start with G.
Okay. So I don't think that there's a right way to have this conversation. I think you got to understand who you're dealing with. Because I think I've been thinking about this today more than usual, which is like, I think it's easy for us to be like, Black boys all have the same experience, and they don't. It's very different in Seattle as opposed to Minneapolis, as opposed to Chicago or Lake County, or, you know, and I think that every conversation has to start with the understanding of where that young person is, right? So for me, my son being 4, our conversation is just a basic level of like, every conversation that I try to have with my son starts with the level of everybody is human. Like, there's nobody who's inherently good or nobody who's inherently bad. Like, even within your parents, your siblings, there's no like just good or bad, right? Like, so just meeting people where they're at and just trying to simplify things. And yeah.
Okay.
I'll follow up to what he is saying. One thing that he does really well, I thought what he was going to say is that being that Che is 4, he sees a lot about cops and robbers on the things that he watches, right? Kids, YouTube, whatever it is. And so he notices police often. And so one thing that G has done really well about is to explain to Che that not all cops are good cops or good people. And not all cops are bad people, but there are some, right? So that the expectation isn't that when he has a situation with a cop that isn't favorable or pleasant, he's surprised, right? And so trying to be as realistic as possible with also knowing that he's 4. Like, at some point, it'll probably sit more with him what dad is saying to him as opposed to now, because he'll still see people get pulled over, we drive by, that person must have done something bad. We don't know that, right? And so trying to demystify situations and really what the reality of, you know, police is at this point in life. You know, that's kind of the approach he's taking, which I think is super valuable, so that he's not necessarily surprised should something happen and go wrong.
I was just going to add that it's been really important for me, for my kids to see me in the moment, because I think sometimes it's easier to go, I don't want them to see me cry. Let me go and figure out what I'm going to tell them. But there was a period with last summer where it was happening back to back in terms of what was being televised. It was, you know, getting the news of Ahmaud Arbery and doing my run in solidarity with that. It was Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, in a matter of a short span of time. And I remember just like breaking down and just hitting the floor with the news. And I know that in that moment, my kids were scared, but the truth was I was scared. And so I think it's an ever balancing act of, okay, to your point, G and Michelle, like they're young. So I don't want them to be overly scared every time they walk out the door. But at the same time, there is something going on. There is a moment happening. And when they're older, they're going to be asked about it. And I don't want them to be in the dark. And then there are other times where I don't have to give. So let me get myself together so that I can answer the questions and understand that I'm not, my cup is not full enough to pour over into yours in that moment. And I think that's true, whether we're talking about race stuff at work or at home. Like I'm not gonna do this with you today.
Yeah, I get that.
See, my view might be a little radical. I think it was just yesterday. I don't know what was going on prior to them coming to my room, but our 5-year-old twins came in, and out of the blue, maybe they was talking to mom about it, but they asked me if I like police, which sounds like I'm making it up. But they literally said, "Daddy, do you like police?" And I said, "No, I don't." And they said, "Why not?" And I was like, "I'm not gonna get into all of that." But I do think we live in this society, and especially when it comes to media, and I don't mean the news, just as I was talking about with chain cops and robbers and things like that, where pretty much everything is police officers are always typically portrayed as the good guys until you get into like real adult entertainment, right? But for the most part, they're the good guys, and so kids are raised believing that police are here to protect us. It's them versus the bad guys, and all of these sorts of things which I believe causes a whole lot of psychological issues, especially when you talk about kids in the Black community and they see people around them at odds with the police who are supposed to be good. And so I honestly don't think there's anything wrong with telling my kids, yeah, no, the police are not here to be your friends. We're not going to inherently view them as trustworthy or good guys or whatever. And so, no, son, I don't necessarily like the police because my interactions with them aren't necessarily positive or fruitful. And just like we would teach a kid to, not touch a hot stove or to not mess with a stray dog, I think it's perfectly okay to teach them be cautious when you see police. One of our sons, when he was younger, used to always wait, like whenever we drive by and he see a cop, he would get all excited and say, hi, police, hi, police. And I usually didn't say nothing about it. I just kind of let it go. But as he got a little older, I said, let's stop doing that. Because from what has been shown, the police are not necessarily our friends. And I'm glad that you are polite and positive and kind to people. And that's fine because police officers are people. So continue to do that. But we don't need to get all geeked when we see a cop on the street. Because when you get a little older, that's not always going to be the case. So, I don't know.
So when the 5-year-olds asked you and you answered, what was their response? Did they ask you more questions? Did the dialogue go any further?
I believe they did, and I don't think I wanted to go into detail. I was also not, always in fully right mind yesterday because I was on a lot of medication after surgery, so I don't fully recall. And they were probably somewhat distracted with the technology that they had in hands. So it wasn't a long conversation, but they did just ask me that out the blue.
So I was having this conversation with a coworker earlier today. I was wondering we're going to have this discussion, and she was like, "Oh, this is going to be good," And so I was asking her along the lines of, having that initial conversation with your kids, which I think to G's point earlier, that conversation happens differently almost for every child, depending on either what they've experienced, what you've experienced, what's going on in the world at that time, right? So in talking to her along the lines of what Kellen was kind of saying is there's this experience that you have, and so then therefore you respond based off of sometimes your experience. And so I was talking to her about what would it look like for us to talk about the police or what's been happening in a way where we're trying to guide the children on how we really want them to respond, and not just the bad experiences that are being seen. And we specifically talked about Cam saying hi to the police every time he saw him, and how, Kellen would feel one way. And then I would be like, well, it's not really that big of a deal that he's excited to, wave at the police or the firefighters. Like, why are we already putting the trajectory out there for him to have an adverse reaction to them? When he's waving, they're waving back. It's a semi-decent experience, right? And so I'm posing, I guess, to y'all, when you think about like your kid's initial interaction with the police, and Che likes cops and robbers, and Cam was waving at the police, and I'm not quite sure what Kendall and Miles and them do when they see them, but do you have an adverse reaction in any way? Are you a little like on guard? Do you feel a little bit of a way when you kind of talk to them? And for those that are watching, feel free to comment below and ask us some questions, because we're watching those and they're being monitored, and we'll definitely raise those as we continue to discuss.
I think for me, like my kids definitely know what the police are here for, regulations and different things. And for safety degree, it's like if I compare it to teaching the kid how to swim, right? And so we're gonna start off in the shallow and teach them the dangers and safety of that way. And then the deeper they get, the more levels I have to take it to them and explain it in different ways. And it's definitely also corresponding with age and corresponding with how much time are you going to really be spending on your own in the world. So my oldest, it's a different conversation about what might happen to her versus the youngest. So it's like trying to prepare them, and I'm trying not to taint them, but the reality is this type of way. Like, do I have a response when I see the police? Yeah, I got an internal jump. It's just built in me. Like I'm always looking out and seeing like, where's there a cop car? All right, what speed am I doing? All right, what do I need to do if this had to get pulled over? How are we gonna have this conversation? Type of deal. It's all about, it's just built in me. So yeah.
I mean, I would also say, to a point of know your kids. So we got a middle one that we took her to one Black History Museum exhibit. And a few months later, she was reading her teacher. So she's just the type that will just pick up on stuff. And I like to try to explain to my kids. There will be a day where I will want to explain to them where the history of police officers come from as slave catchers. But I'm trying to be careful, because I know that who my kids are, in the sense of, okay, how will they take that information? Will it soak in properly? So, I mean, I think it is a little bit of knowing who your kids are, and also not hiding your reaction either, because I believe that our kids are watching us. And even when we don't say stuff, they inherently are picking up on vibes.
Right. G, I saw you nodding your head.
So it's a couple things for me. One, I'm really big on, when I can, not passing down my trauma and my fear of anything, right, to my kids, because their experience might be completely different than mine. Listen, if it's a snake around, I'm out of here. But it's been times where me and Michelle have been somewhere, and I've said to Michelle, like, okay, listen, normally we went to a little fair a couple of years ago, and they had these snakes, and my son was about 2, and he was so excited. My initial reaction was like, there's not a chance, absolutely not, but then I kind of, me and Michelle looked at each other like, okay, we got to go over there and engage in a way that, because that snake's not inherently bad, and it's the same for me. It's the same thing with people. Like, you just you got to know your kids, one, and you got to just not make your kids fearful just to be fearful. You know, just fear for the sake of fear is not necessarily healthy. Like,
Right.
but to the point that was made earlier, your kids picking up on social cues and understanding, you know, little things that are going on, that to me is more healthy than, you know, just that fear to be fearful. So and then also to circle back, when Kellen was saying something earlier, I thought about, and it pertains to this question. There's like a thing that happens. I think we've all, I would assume that we've all had similar experiences in terms of you see your parent or you see this person that you look up to, and you realize that, oh, like there's like a moment where you realize like they're not human, they're not perfect, right? Like, and sometimes that could just be like a gradual thing, and sometimes it's a very sudden, very like blunt
Like the light
moment.
switch. Yeah.
You know, and I wonder how much of me it talking to my kid about certain things is because I don't want them to have that moment. I don't want them to think that the police are like this amazing thing. You know, it's the same way I tell them, like, listen, daddy's not perfect. Daddy makes mistakes. Daddy's human. You know, and I don't want him to think that. And then because that can be hard, right? So in order to protect them from that, listen, we're just gonna pull the band-aid off. Like, that's a human being over there.
Right, which I'm glad you brought up what Kellen said, because there's a question that came in the comments for Kellen specifically regarding his answer. And so the people want to know, do you see yourself changing your perspective on how you teach your kids about the police from a positive view? And I guess what they want to know is, like, consider if one of your sons came to you and said, Dad, I want to be a police officer.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, part of what we're talking about is how we teach our kids. You know, I think we're always growing and learning there, right? So, and as someone mentioned earlier, they're all different, right? And so, in the way I teach and present information to them, yeah, I mean, hopefully, I'll continue to learn and grow and adapt, especially to who they are as people. In terms of my views about the police and whether they should have a positive, negative, or neutral view of the police, I mean, my beliefs about the role of the police serve in our society, and how they go about accomplishing that. Um, Maybe it'll change, you know, with more information. You know, we should always adjust and change our viewpoints if we have more information. But right now, you know, my stance is pretty solid on that. In that I don't believe that police as an institution is one that is necessarily designed to be for our benefit, especially as Black people. And so, yeah, I will continue to teach my kids that. And honestly, if one of my kids wanted to become a cop, I tell them that's very short-sighted. But if they're an adult, they can do what they want to do. You know, it can't be disowned and nothing like that. But I would probably have a lot of questions as to why they want to do that, as to what they hope to accomplish. Because I am a strong believer that, you know, that whole, you know, changing from the inside, that that stuff is kind of nonsense. It doesn't actually work like that, which is why we see police brutality committed by Black cops against Black people. You know, I think that the entire system needs to be overhauled and changed. And so I do know police officers that are good people. I do know police officers that are attempting to do good in the community, but there's still one part of one part of the system, right? We can know individuals that are in the military that are good, excellent, great people. That doesn't mean that we have to condone the things the military does, or not think that the military needs to do things in a different way overseas and abroad, right? So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'll change and start, you know, encouraging my kids to wave at police or whatnot. Again, as G said, they're all people, they're all human beings, and I do want my children to treat people well as individuals. But just as I said, if I'm gonna teach them to be cautious about a rabid dog or a loose dog, cautious about, how to hold scissors around the house, I'm gonna be teaching them to be cautious about how they interact and deal with police officers because they're not there for their benefit.
So when you talk about being cautious, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna pick on Kellen just a little bit, and if anybody wants to chime in, you can. But there's cautious and no, I don't like the police. So like the conversation with the 5-year-olds was, Dad, do you like the police? Your answer was no, versus cautiousness, right? So like, how do you kind of, I look at 5-year-olds as like completely moldable, like Play-Doh. Like whatever you kind of tell them, they kind of believe. And because your dad, it goes even further because my dad said so, right? Or my mom said so. So I feel like at 5, that answer of just a blanket no is different than Cam at 9, no, who might come back and say, well, why not? Or Quentin at 16 with no might be like, tell me more. Is that because of what you just saw on the news kind of thing, right? So we talked about ages. So one of the things that, the whole point of having this discussion, talking about raising Black children in today's culture, was all about having these conversations with our children. What does it look like? What does it sound like? How do they walk away from those discussions with their parents, or how are parents doing it? So I wanted you to kind of maybe dig in just a little bit in terms of that blanket no to the 5-year-old.
Well, I mean, to your point, yeah, 5-year-olds are sometimes very literal, right? But maybe I'm tripping, or maybe my blood is just up, or maybe I'm highly medicated. But honestly, I'm okay with my 5-year-olds being like, nah, I'll get down with police. Because there's a million other people we get down. We brought home fireman hats for them from New Orleans, right? Like, hey, firemen are awesome. Paramedics, they're awesome. All teachers, all these other professions and things like that are people that, are professions that we have respect for and love for, and we're teaching them, yeah, these are noble things to do. I don't necessarily believe that policing is that, and I don't put that on the people wearing the uniform as individuals. I put that on the overall system of policing. And
The
so,
occupation of policing?
I'm sorry?
The occupation of policing?
I put that on the system more so than the individuals, if that makes sense, right? I think the system of policing is corrupted. So even the people, even if there are people that are within that system that are attempting to do good, I think the overall system of how things are structured and what's in place leads to bad outcomes. And so I'm okay if my kids at 5, 6, 7, 8 are like, nah, I don't like police. I'm okay if you see a cop and you put your head down and keep it moving, right? Because I don't want to give you the false impression that they are here for you. Now, maybe there's some individuals within the departments that feel like, hey, I'm here for you and that's what I want to do. And that's all well and good. But not everybody thinks like you. Not everybody's going to approach it the same way you do. And we don't always have the luxury of figuring out who's good and who's bad. So if you want to steer clear of all of them, cool thing, because you're not going to get burned. I mean, look, you can get burned in those interactions, but I'm okay with that. Me personally, I don't interact with the cops if I don't have to. I don't see a police officer on the street and be like, hey, buddy, how you doing? Right? Now, if I meet somebody, I'm chopping up with them, they're a cop, cool thing. You're a cop. You're a person. But yeah, I'm okay with that blanket no to my 5-year-olds because they get blanket yeses about a whole lot of other stuff, And I think it's because of the kind of pro-police propaganda that has been kind of prevalent in this country for 100 years. A lot of it rooted in racism or in classism. We get real averse to this. Ooh, how are you going to tell your kids that police aren't good or that you don't like police? And like, there's been jokes and things in movies about dentists being evil for years, and nobody really cares. If you told your kid, "Nah, I don't get down with dentists," nobody would have a real problem with it, right? But police, it's like, "Ooh, wait a minute, that's a step too far. You can't not to like the people that got guns and can kill you with impunity. Don't tell them you don't like them. Nah. Look, they hold the power of life and death over you, and I don't agree with that. So nah, son, I don't like cops. You ain't got to like cops."
So we're going to come back later in the discussion to what happens when your spouse feels one way and you feel a different way. That's for later though.
I just give them candy when I say that, so they listen to daddy.
It's okay. There's also a question on the table, and I'm gonna pose it to the group based on some of Kellen's examples, right? Like, I think we're all well aware that there are, what do they call them, bad apples in the bunch or whatnot. But then on the flip side, there's also those individuals within the community who grew up and said, I'm gonna be a cop because I want to impact change and I want to be on the police force to do something different. And we actually see the fruit of that labor, right? They've either started little things within the community where they go into the schools, they do like donuts with cops conversations and different things like that. So when you think about like the comparison of good police versus ones that are involved in the community, what say you? How does that impact your conversations with your kids? Does it impact your conversations with your kids at all? Kellen, we know how you feel, so I'm gonna let somebody else answer this one.
Go ahead, this is bad radio. Somebody got to talk.
So there's a repeat the last part of the question that you just had. Just the last part.
Let's see, do I remember how do you have those conversations with your kids, good police or involved police officers, I'll say, I won't use the word good or bad, involved in the community versus your example of like Derek Chauvin, right? Did I say his name, his last name?
Yes. And we don't have to worry about whether we said it right or not. So I think when I don't think I need to concern myself with making those distinctions with my kids at this age. I think I could just have the conversation about, listen, there's some good and there's some bad, but the nuance of it is not going to help my kid, right? So the other part of this is I have a godson that's 12 that is like, he's having these interactions with police, with people, whatever, and it's like those nuances don't help my kids in those moments. Like,
talk about that a little bit more. What do you mean? Those nuances don't matter.
It doesn't. Like, there's no way when say my godson who's 12, if he gets stopped by the police for whatever reason, right, wrong, whatever, him trying to figure out whether this is a good cop who, volunteers his time at the YMCA or the Boys and Girls Club versus somebody who's gonna abuse you is not that's not what's gonna help him in that situation, right? Like, what's gonna help him in that situation is to get out of that situation as quickly as possible, right? And if that means that, you know what, okay, yep, I'll take the ticket, sir, thank you, appreciate it, and bring it back to me so I can have that fight. But like at 12, he doesn't know. Like, he doesn't even know if the cop was to give him a resume of all his good deeds. He doesn't know that those are good deeds. Like, if it says PlayStation on there, it could say, stole 20 PlayStations and gave them to people who didn't have them. And my godson's going to be like, oh, this dude gives out PlayStations. Like, it none of that is helpful in those moments. It's just, that has nothing to do with the interaction that's happening at that moment, I guess. So, yeah.
I think that goes to the bigger point too, of like the community's awareness of police and how to interact with them should not be what determines how those interactions go for the most part. It should be on the police and the police officers to do right by the community, right? So whether, like, we shouldn't have to be sitting here having a conversation about, well, do we figure out if this is a good cop or a bad cop, right?
I mean, we shouldn't be having a conversation about raising Black children in today's culture with the police, but these are conversations that have to be had. I mean, I think in some regards, to G's point, I think gets back to what we're really talking about, which is raising Black children in today's culture. Share your questions in the comments. Thank you so much. Because what I heard you say and what you were talking about with your godson was almost to a certain extent, you need to kind of make sure you make it home. So whatever like age grouping you're in, at whatever point I'm having this conversation with you, it's the dialogue is about either your interaction with them, my child, your interaction with the police, and or what happens when you see police when you're out and about, how you engage, how you don't engage. And a lot of it, you guys let me know what you think, is about our behaviors, how we operate, what we do, what we don't do. You know, I remember when I was in high school and I was getting ready to drive, I was just super excited about driving. You know, with my son in high school now who's getting ready to drive, I'm terrified. Like I legit want to sell my car and get something that don't have tinted windows without no rims and all these various different things, because you're not ever driving my car. You could drive your dad's car, but you can't drive mine.
Whoa. Shots fired.
No, it's not. Stay focused. It's not, you get what I'm saying though? And so at 16, my conversation about raising this Black child in today's culture, and where driving is supposed to be this exciting part of turning 16, you get your license, has turned into anxiety. And I'm not really sure if I want you to drive. Maybe I should just be your Uber driver for a little bit longer. So, you know.
I mean, I definitely agree with you on teaching, our children how to respond and being able to, the goal is to make it home safe, because you can't really read what direction an individual is feeling. Are they feeling threatened by you or this behavior? Are they having a bad day? Or maybe this happened before, all these different things. So you have to the goal is to make it home safe. I mean, one of the reasons why, pushing back on, Kellen a little bit, I can't plant a seed of like, I don't like the police. Because if that seed grows into a tree and they get into a situation and then their physiological response of fear kicks in the situation, it could, basically end up a different way that you want to end up with, because you want to be calm in the situation. See what I'm saying?
I'm Kellen. Hold on. So, if y'all don't know, me and Kellen have known each other for a long time. So, I'm gonna jump in, and the thing I think, because I thought this, what you said, I thought about when he said it the first time, and to me, I'm not a fan of the police. If I I speak to everybody if I walk past them, right? So that's about as much as you're gonna get out of me. But I also, I'm not necessarily, fear is not a word that I wouldn't tell my kids to fear the police. And I would hope that through our conversations, they would understand that, they shouldn't fear, but they should be aware, right? I saw that JD just said that in the comments, right? Like, be aware of all. And I can respect somebody, and we can, there's a lot of people, that we interact with that we don't care for at all, right? Like, but that respect still has to be there, right? Just for a human being. And then also just being aware of who they really are, right? Like, be aware that this person has the ability to do X, Y, and Z, right? And so when you move, you need to move with that in mind, right? And me and Kellis, I don't know I don't know where everybody grew up, but I know like me and Kellen's experience in Minneapolis is going to be probably drastically different than Michelle's experience in Minneapolis, right? Like, so I think just having them conversations and not liking them doesn't mean like that you're fearful, but just don't care for you. Kellen's gonna get on the soapbox now.
No, I think the point, like you said, JD, in the comments, and you kind of brought it full circle, is that there's this respect for all, right? Like, and I think when I look at the people that I'm having this discussion with, one of the things that I know about all of you is that you do teach your kids to be respectful. And so I don't necessarily, when we talk about raising Black children in today's culture, right? We're raising children to be respectful individuals, right? We're not raising our kids to be individuals that are F the police, right? Like if I saw my son do that on his social media, I'd blow a gasket. G is like shrugging his shoulders. But my whole thing is like, and these are the conversations I have with Quentin, right? Nothing can be deleted off of social media, right? And so I'll bring up, all right, so you just posted F the police, right? And that's a thing, right? Kids are doing it all over the place. When something happens on the news, it's a news story, it's F the police, whatever. Okay, so Quentin, you get into a situation, you haven't necessarily done anything wrong, but if they decide to pull up your history and see what you've posted, now you've been labeled as an individual that's like F the police. And so now the police know that you like F the police, and now the police got an issue with you. And now we got ourselves in a whole situation that we didn't even need to be in because you posted something, or now you label as whatever. And so when we talk about like these discussions or conversations, let's dig into the respect aspect a little bit more. What do those conversations sound like? And Charles, I'm gonna pick on you just a little bit, and I want you to kind of go back to working at Allendale. Mm-hmm. It's okay, Heather, it's okay, he gonna be all right. Breathe through it, Charles, breathe through it.
I'm good, let's go.
And just tell us what Allendale was. I hope it's okay that I mentioned Allendale's name like that. But.
Well, I mean, it was like, and so to cover you, it wasn't Allendale, but it's a place really just like Allendale, not too far down the street.
Oh, okay.
There you
Thank
go.
you for the correction. Appreciate it.
You're all good. What was it like to be there? So basically, we had anywhere from, I would say, my youngest to like 8 to 18-year-olds, or the day before they turned, 21, in a facility. It was all boys, where we would try to do wraparound therapy, and they were coming from all different, the system, from foster, all different ways, and they come in with a mentality of F the police, period, point blank, because a lot of the things that they experienced, like growing up and being on their own and being in the streets and being in trauma-induced situations, that is what it was. And so my mentality, definitely working with them, like I have to come in giving respect myself, right? I can't come in to demand respect. I got to come in building rapport and on a consistent basis, and being able to talk to them at a level they understanding, and being able to make that connection before I talked about anything life changing, because it wasn't gonna stick. And so, like, as far as the follow-up question, when we go out to explain the situation.
Well, I just wanted to add just on the respect piece, because it's more than just the police in that regards. I think what we're talking about and instructing our kids, and just in terms of wherever people are, different levels that people are at, can be applied in a lot of situations. And I just remember when you were working there, just talking about respect, you're trying to respect them and getting them to respect you. It was also a point where you were like, well, I couldn't even come up in there because you know what I'm saying, because of some of the trauma that these individuals, these young men had experienced, he didn't want them knowing who his family was in case they tried to get to me to hurt him. So I just think, you know, and G, you sort of said this earlier, and I know that you believe this too, it's hard to know what trauma you're looking at. Yet we're trying to teach our kids to do the best that they can, to be human, to respect and to love everybody. But that's just the point that I remember in that situation, that it goes a lot of different ways when you're talking about respect and what an individual may have experienced in trauma where they can't respect others.
And I think it's interesting too, because you know we all, well, like I believe in respect and authority, right? You know, you respect the authority of those that have authority over you. You know, show it the proper reverence, right? I think the problem that we run into when it comes to this issue of police is that that's an institution where that authority can be abused, held over your head, and used to take from you. You know, um, and we're at its mercy. You know, if your boss at work is abusing their authority, you know, ultimately you can leave that job. You know, if your teacher at school is abusing their authority, ultimately there's things in place where, you know, hopefully, you know, the kid can get out of that situation. When the police abuse their authority, you know, we end up in jail, harmed, hurt, whatever the case may be. And so I think that that's a problem, you know, and that's something that I don't know if there's a real good answer to, right? We believe in respect, but ultimately, you know, kind of even what we were talking about previously, you know, we respect the people as individuals and human beings, but do we have to respect all institutions? So can I not have respect for the institution while still respecting the person behind the badge? And I think the answer is yeah. Like if I have an interaction with a police officer, I don't initially come up and say, like, I don't disrespect them. You know, I'll say hello. I speak to him. I even call him sir, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Whatever. But I don't necessarily. That doesn't mean I really have a whole lot of respect for the institution. But I'm showing you respect as an individual. You know, so I think with kids, it's the same thing. Like you know, we're teaching them to respect people, respect human beings, respect their humanity. But just because they put, you know, a badge and a blue vest on doesn't mean that we have to have some different level of respect for that institution. People always say respect the badge. I really don't respect the badge, but I respect you. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, that's maybe hard to to teach kids that, but ultimately they're going to have to decide how that, you know, what level of respect they want to give that institution for themselves. It's my job, it's our job to teach them how to deal with those interactions that they may have with the police, and as Charles said, get home. You know.
So when you think about like um, respecting the person and not necessarily the badge, a question came in earlier about um, corruption, like in the fire station and the medical field and in other institutions or systems, if you will, right? So does the same thought carry across the board for other systems, institutions that have a certain level of authority? You know, doctors not treating Black women correctly, or you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, but there's levels to this thing. You know, like you know, any institution is going to have some level of human error and flaw, and in America in particular, most of these institutions have, you know, some level of racism, classism, whatever, that was instilled in those institutions at some point in the past and is likely continuing on some level now. Um, but there is a difference between, you know, studies showing that, hey, Black people generally get less pain medication from doctors because for whatever reason there's this idea that we can take more pain than white people, versus, you know, police being able to murder us with impunity. You know, like those are two separate things, you know what I'm saying? And so I can respect doctors and paramedics and firemen and all of that, even though, you know, there may be some issues with those institutions. They might not be perfect. They might have things that need to change, but ultimately they're not, you know, there's levels to it. They're not the same level of threat to my life and my freedom as institutional policing is.
Charles, I'm gonna go ahead and let you respond. I just want to remind people, one, thank you for joining this conversation on raising Black children in today's culture, partnering with the AACPG of Lake County. Feel free to drop any questions or comments below. Those are being pushed over to us. But Charles, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, like, I definitely agree with you, you know, Kellen, on that. The overall system of this country from day one, you know, racism was embedded in it, period. Like from day one of creation before the country, you know, when the first ship got to Georgetown, it was a standard that began to be set right then and there. And the difference is like the ability and authority in your hand in this moment where you won't come back. You know what I'm saying? So the higher degree of, you know, safety and security is, you know, at hand when we talk about the system with the police brutality.
And the police, most other institutions besides emergency services, we enter into those institutions to get something from them, right? We go to the hospital, we go to schools to learn whatever. Police, most interactions.
Us over.
What you say?
Go ahead.
I was saying most interactions between police and public are initiated by the police, you know, and so that's what we're talking. We don't have control over whether or not they choose to initiate contact with us, you know, and nine times out of nine, we don't want that contact, you know, and so when we're, you know, so that's why we have to teach the responsive techniques to our kids for this, because this is something, usually those interactions are going to be unexpected, unwanted, you know, and conducted by somebody with a firearm that can end your life, which is very different from, you know, you going into the bank to try to get a loan. You know, those institutions can be messed up too, but there's a different level of consequence if those interactions go wrong.
Michelle, what were you gonna say? G, I thought Michelle was gonna unmute and talk, so I want to give her an opportunity.
I think I had something, but I'm not quite sure. So I'm going to let my husband speak first.
Well, you go ahead and do that then.
I would say to that question, police are the only people in our society who you can't tell your kids to just walk away from if you don't like how that person is treating you.
Woo! Hold on.
That's the only.
Say that one more time.
Police are the only people in our society that you can't tell your kids to walk away from if you don't like how they're treating you. So you gotta
hold on, pause, G. Wait a minute. Like,
okay.
I'm sorry. I need to digest that comment. I don't know about anybody else, but I need to digest that for a second. Because before you move on, I don't want nobody to lose what you just said, because there are comments that are coming in where people are talking about the tools that they carry that can end lives and various different things of that nature. So what you're saying is one more time, and then go ahead. Just one more time.
Okay. I would say the police are the only people you can't teach your children to walk away from if you don't like how they're being treated. I mean, the fact of the matter is, my son's 4. I tell him constantly, listen, if you don't like how your sister's behaving, move, you know, leave. And I say that for everybody, even myself. Like, if you don't like what I'm doing, go in the other room. Like, it's really quite that simple. And I think all the other people that was listed, I read that comment like 4 or 5 times, because everybody else is listed in there you could walk away from. If the fire department comes to your house because you had a medical or whatever, you could tell them, I'm not going in the ambulance. Leave my house. And they'll leave. You know, they'll tell you, like, listen, sir, you're bleeding and you're gonna die if we leave. And then they'll leave. You know, now you can't tell the police that. They're gonna be like, why don't you come on and sit in the back of my car for me for a second, and we're gonna go on down to jail. So I just think everything should be put into context. We can't just say because the police are corrupt, then you also have to, all these other things. It's like everything needs to be put in its proper context.
I'm still digesting that one.
And I mean, to G's point, we've seen cases in the past year or two of people being killed by police while trying to avoid the interaction with the police. Names is flying through, but the young kid in Colorado who was killed, he was walking, minding his business. The police initiated an interaction with him. He was trying to not have that interaction with him, and he ended up dead. Like, we can't get away from them. Even if you're not doing anything wrong.
The other part is that we live in a society, right, wrong, or indifferent. If a firefighter does something that kills you, they're gonna be fired from their job, and they may be charged with an involuntary manslaughter or something to that effect, right? If they do something that causes you harm, they will get in trouble for that. If the teacher beats your kid and kills that kid, they will get in trouble for that, right? If the police beats your child or does something that endangers your child, they will, because of the power of their unions, be put on paid administrative leave, right? And may or may not be back on the job in 6 months. Like, that's
most likely.
So we got to put things in their proper context. I'm done.
So getting back to the notion of having these conversations with your children, and I know some you guys have. I'm just gonna give an example. So we have 25-year-old twins who are in the Navy. They have cars. They pay their own bills. They live their best life, right? One of them will often drive home. And one of the first things we say to this one is, do not speed, right? This one in particular was speeding, decided to post on Facebook that he got pulled over. I see it on Facebook and I'm like, my heart literally is like, okay, you got pulled over. And I think he was in Colorado or something when he got pulled over. It was some state that it was like, of all the states you could, get pulled over, why this one? So if you had a 25-year-old, right, what type of conversations would you be having with this child that's going to be driving cross country? Or what dialogue would you have knowing that they got pulled over and got a ticket for speeding? Like, what do those conversations look and sound like? Or could look and sound like?
So I actually had this conversation. So I'm a barber, and I have these conversations with kids. I mean, it's all about safety. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't feel safe in the presence of the police, right? Because they don't necessarily have to put your safety first, right? So my constant conversation is, listen, just be safe. Do whatever you can to make sure that you do everything you need to do, not because, you need to just always have your ID ready so that you don't agitate this person, but just so you could get home. Like, we can have all the conversations later and we can, go down to the precinct and do whatever, file a report, whatever it is that needs to happen. But at the end of the day, like, you got to come home. So just do what you can to minimize those risks, which is kind of crazy to say out loud because it's like it's not their responsibility. But
Look, to your point, it actually is like, and this is why when we talk about respecting the badge and all of this stuff, sometimes I roll my eyes because G mentioned earlier police unions and police policy and things like that. Police are trained to put their safety first, right? That's why they're taught to shoot to kill. They shoot center mass because they're taught that if there's a threat, they ought to put that threat down to protect themselves first, right? They're like soldiers in enemy territory. So when we interact with police, they are not responsible for our health and well-being. They are allowed to put our health in danger. They are allowed to damage us and harm us if they feel reasonable, a reasonable reason. Can I say that? If they if they feel there's reasonable cause to do so, right? So it is, and when we teach our kids, it is their job to protect their safety and their health because the cops ain't gonna do it. And we've seen time after time after time after time again, police harming people without cause, but nothing happens from it, right? Derek Chauvin, you mentioned earlier, he had all sorts of complaints against him as a cop. Every time we hear about these cops shooting people, you can usually look back and you find that there's complaints against them. We know that the departments and the unions have systems set in place where they dismiss those complaints and make them, or do not make them available to the public. It is a cost of doing business for them. Brutality, being physical, all of those sorts of things. And so, yeah, it is your job, whether you're 16 or 25, to protect yourself in any interaction you have with the police, because they will protect themselves, even though they have bulletproof vests and multiple weapons on them. They will treat you like you're a threat to them and do whatever harm they feel they need to you.
So we have probably about 30 minutes or so left. You guys have mentioned a couple of things throughout our conversation in regards to safety, practical responses, responsive techniques, I've heard in our discussion. So I actually want to get back to kind of come in full circle a little bit, and let's legitimately kind of talk about, what does safety look like? You mentioned talking about safety. What does safety look like? Or when you were talking to people, what examples did you actually give? What are the examples of responsive techniques that we're either talking to youth about, we're talking to our young children about? And I have some examples even of, preparing Quentin, like I said, for being a driver. There are certain things that I'm like, okay, so do we need to get one of those things for the visor? So if you get pulled over, you only have to raise your hand about this high to pull out the information that you need to give to an officer if you get pulled over. So in the topic of safety and responsive techniques, what do you guys have to say about that? And as you're talking about it, if you could give like an age or something to kind of tie it together, that would be helpful.
Do not announce that you have a legal firearm.
Go ahead, Charles.
I mean, like when talking to students, I might have conversations with at like one of my high schools or mentees or different things. Like number one is like gotta be calm. Like first you gotta calm yourself down so you're not responding in a way, even though you might be mad, you gotta be chill, you gotta be calm, you gotta comply, you have to, do whatever it is to be safe. So you have to tell them what you're doing, have your stuff in a ready type of deal before you do it. So that's like some of the conversations I've been having like with different students and mentees before.
I've told Q just yes, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. Don't say anything more than you need to. You don't need to have, you're not there to have a conversation. They pull you over, give them the information they ask for. Take whatever they tell you to do, just do it. Don't talk. Like adults, that's a whole nother thing. You're older, if you feel like you know your rights and you want to push back on some things, you feel like you can, okay. But these kids, no, just here's my license, registration. Here you go. Oh, I was speeding. Okay, don't argue with them. And don't argue. Don't push back. Again, just do whatever you gotta do to get out of that situation quickly and healthily. Is healthily a word? Healthy. There you go.
Definitely another piece of the puzzle is nowadays we reaching for our cell phone for security, but we know in some cases that ends up being the thing that causes the high risk or perceives the high risk that takes you out. And then there's different states. I was like looking up the laws so I can understand for myself. There are different states there. It's illegal for you to record, and then that's a reason for them to get you on the top of that. So
Yeah. Knowing your rights is important, but at the same time, we've seen cases of people knowing their rights, and again, when in that individual situation, the cop has all the control. Whether they're in the wrong or right, they have all the control. So get out of it.
Yeah, I definitely would say to anybody who has an interaction with the police that, to Kellen's earlier point, right? Like your safety is first. So, having your things together, right? Not having, which Michelle will tell you, I have a tendency to have things just kind of scattered in my pocket, and I'm pulling out 10 things at once, right? Like all of those little things are going to help you. Also, to Kellen's point, that's not your friend. Like the police are not your friend. So, where are you going tonight? Sir, can I please just have my ticket? That's a conversation that I will be having with my son in terms of it doesn't matter where I'm going tonight. If I could just get my ticket and be on my way, I would appreciate that, and we can have that conversation later when you get home. But you don't have to sit up here, and I think a lot of times we get into this, like we have to be overly friendly as well, right? In order to be disarming. And it's like, no, I'm just not going to be rude. And also, I'll take my ticket. Thank you. Appreciate it. And I think for me, that's the conversation I will have with my kids as well. Like, and with my godson as he starts to drive. And listen, license, registration. Oh, I was doing 65 and a 60. I wasn't aware of that, but thank you for letting me know. I'll take that ticket so I can give that to my parents.
To that point, practically, a practical thing is as soon as you get pulled over, as soon as you put that car in park, take out your information. Don't be reaching for it when the cop is walking the car. Nothing. Take out your wallet, whatever it is, right away, so you have it all ready to go.
So right up there on the dashboard.
Yep. And if you got to, you say, "Hey, sir. Hey, ma'am. I'm gonna reach for the registration. Is here in my," or no, you say it's here. It's in the glove compartment. Is it okay if I go get it? Is it okay if I reach over? Like, so they give you verbal permission to make any sort of moves or whatever.
So I've, like I said, I've been having these conversations with Q a little bit, and I don't know why I think of driving first. Like that's the first thing that really comes to my mind. Most of the time, like I don't really think of, oh, you're walking down the street and, a cop is going to pull you to the side and ask you questions, or you're shopping and, I never think of those scenarios. And so I know that those are things that I should probably have in mind, but for whatever reason, I don't know if you guys are the same, I often only think about my son being pulled over in terms of bad policing, it not ending well, and these are the things that I need to prepare you for. So one of the things that I often talk to Q about is don't give them a reason. Like if the speed limit is 45, drive the speed limit. If you're supposed to change lanes and use your signal, like use your signal. Like, and I know there are going to be a lot of people that's like, it don't matter if you follow the rules anyway, they'll pull you over. And that very well may be true, right? Like we all know that there's the caveat of if the officer wants you, they got you, they'll pull you over and they'll do whatever they want to do with you. But in regards to having the conversation with my son specifically, I am of the mindset of do not give them a reason to pull you over. So when you start driving with your friends, what we not gonna do is blast the music and be swerving, changing lanes because that looks cool. You driving the drive to get from point A to point B. This is not like an art of creativity where you know what I'm saying? Like, get where you got to go and then come home. Don't do nothing more, don't do nothing less. Like, even before getting into the conversation of what happens when you get pulled over, I need you to work on not getting pulled over to the best of your ability. Now, they'll pull you over if they want to, but will you be confident enough? Does your character say enough about you in terms of what you do behind the wheel when nobody is watching, that even if you get pulled over, like I got pulled over for something ridiculous and the officer was like, you did this. And I was like, no, I didn't. But okay, let me have my ticket, because I knew I was still gonna get a ticket, but I knew I didn't do what they were saying I did. And so I've been wanting him to kind of have this mentality of like, driving is a privilege and you need to kind of almost honor it as such. Like, this is not a game.
Yeah.
You disagree, Kellen? Tell me why.
I agree in the sense that, yes, I agree, but I believe that is an example of what one of the issues we have with policing is in the first place, that we have to really instill in our kids this idea of every time you get behind the wheel, you have to make sure that you're doing everything you can to not be pulled over, everything you can to not have the police interacting with you. You know, we're not talking about doing crazy stuff like driving 60 in a 35. We're talking about don't drive 43 in a 35. You know, don't do anything to draw attention to yourself. You know, and that's kind of the sign of people that live in on some level of police state. Now I know that's a bit of a hyperbole, but like, we're at that point where we're saying, hey, do whatever you gotta do so these people don't mess with you. Because if they mess with you, they could kill you, harm you, or whatever. You know, and I think that just speaks to, again, what the issue is, right? I always say, if the police are here to protect and serve us, why is it that every time we get behind the wheel, we're more scared of seeing the police than we are of other drivers? You know what I mean? We're more worried about the cops than we are about the other stuff around us. Something's wrong with that. That doesn't feel, I don't feel like I'm being protected or served when every time I get on the highway and I see cars around me whipping at, at 85 and in the speed limit 70. I'm like, ooh, I got to make sure I slow down because I'm scared of these cops. Not because I'm scared of getting a ticket, but because I'm scared of the interaction, and that's the problem.
I mean, I think I hear what you're saying. I think my point of the matter is there are rules of the road. Mm-hmm. Like, you take a test to get your driver's license, they teach you got to do so many hours, you have to do all these things. So there are some things that you should not do when you're behind the wheel of a car with other people's lives kind of in your hands while you're driving a car. So I'm not saying it from the perspective of, I don't want you to get pulled over, but I do think that there are some ways that if you follow the rules of the road, if you will, you should not.
Yeah, but most of these things that we talk about, these interactions, aren't things that are real safety issues. These are things that are money-making issues, right? We get a ticket for not coming to a complete 0 mile per hour stop when making a right turn, on a red light, not because it's a real safety issue, but because that's a way for them to hit you with a ticket and make some money. You get pulled over going 41 to 35, not because you're driving recklessly, but because that's how a lot of these counties and towns make their money. Right. So these police aren't interacting with us. They're not pulling us over because of the safety of the road, right? Because of the morality of these driving, of these rules people are breaking. They're doing this because this is how these areas make money. This is an economic thing more so than a moral thing. And in that economic strategy, we get all these other things. Like when Ferguson was blowing up, we started finding out about how much of the city of Ferguson's budget was coming from parking and speeding tickets, right? these cops they weren't out there protecting us. They were out there making money for the county and the city. And in that, they're initiating these interactions with us where our lives are in their hands. So I hear what you're saying, but I think it's a little deeper than that.
Yeah.
So I should have the conversation with the 16-year-old about it?
No, you should. That's what I say. I agree with you.
Okay. Go ahead, G.
I was gonna say the same thing. Like, I think y'all are both right. Like, there's a systemic issue, but then also there's, hey, listen, if you can cut your interactions down with the police, let's just go ahead and do that too, right? Like, you can be right, but let's just remove yourself from the situation as much as you can. Now, if they come looking for you, which, you know what I'm saying, they will, but when they do, that's different.
Right.
But yeah.
So there's a question that I want to get to, and we got about 15 minutes or so left. We may stay on a little bit longer if it gets real good, so don't mind us. But drop your questions in the comments. The question is about a 23-year-old young Black adult. I think you guys saw it in the chat, right? So the situation is that he got pulled over, license registration. He didn't have, his license wasn't current because he had just moved into town, so to speak. Officer asked him to get out of the car, sit in the back of his car while they figure out what his current address is. The question is, what do you guys think about how he responded? Should he have done something different?
I would say that he's alive to type that comment. So, I mean, you did something right. I think that there's times when, like, whatever you did is technically, when you move, you're supposed to go get an ID with the yellow paper. I think, or I don't know if you guys have yellow papers there. I don't know how other states do it, but here we have IDs, and then you change your paperwork, and they give you a little yellow sheet that says this person changed their paperwork. So I don't think you did anything wrong, and I don't think you did anything wrong. I also don't think you did anything right. Like, I just think you just did what you felt comfortable with doing in that moment, and there's nothing wrong with that.
And I think it also goes back. So what you just mentioned, G, to me is a part of the rules of the road, if you will, right? Like, if you're moving from another state to a different state, there are certain things that you need to have available to you in the event that you get pulled over. So is it wrong for the cop to be like, oh, you don't have a current license with your current ID? No, if the rules say that you have to, like, update your information or whatever, you have to do it. And this isn't about, like, I'm just saying in general, when you have to have an interaction because you are pulled over, there are certain things that now come up in the midst of you've now gotten pulled over. So now there's the question of, is your paperwork in order? Is it right? Is it up to date? Is your license expired? You know, all of these other questions come into play once you're pulled over. And so these are things that we now have to navigate through. So if you're going to be on the road, do you know what's required of you to be on the road in the event that you get pulled over? All of your paperwork needs to be up to date.
Well, so also, I think there's another caveat to that, which is here, if you get pulled over, I can say to them, they give me my ticket right there. They don't mail the ticket. You know, so I saw somebody else said, couldn't that response cause more harm? Not just give me my ticket. Like, there's not a mail factor. There's not a, you know, him getting put in the cars, I think is, I don't know how you guys do it.
That question,
those were two different things.
Your ticket. But I think that's one of those things too.
And he was in the passenger seat. Sorry, correction. He was sitting in the passenger seat, not in the back of the officer's car. Which does, I mean, I was like, what was the point of that? But anyway.
You're still going to jail if they want to.
Well,
I mean, to that question about the, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ted. Go ahead.
go ahead, Kellen.
And all I was gonna say was you never know how the cops gonna respond. Giving my ticket can make them mad. Some people might get irritated if they think you mocking them by saying yes, sir. We have no idea how the police is gonna respond. So, as long as we try not to be disrespectful in the Jalen's question, hey, as long as you're respectful, you do whatever you're comfortable with. I would always say, am I being detained? Because if you're not being detained, you don't gotta go to the car. But if you do what you gotta do to get home.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, like, that's the reason why we're having this conversation, because it isn't easy to parent Black kids in this culture. And somebody had dropped a story early up where I also want to hold space for the fact that, as parents, when our kids get to the age of being out of our sight and there are just things that we can't control and can't talk them through in the moment, it is terrifying to think of what could go wrong. And so having conversations like these in community where you can talk to other parents and be like, well, what would you do with your kid? And you respect their parenting style as well, is why I'm glad we're having this conversation. But I just wanted to hold space for that person that shared that story of their son, really suffering harm at the hands of police when they didn't do anything wrong. And some of these rules, at the end of the day, weren't made for us as Black people in this country. And that's why we're having this conversation. And we continue to have this conversation, whether it's on camera or off camera, because to have to parent our kids through this is stressful, is a lot. And as we stated earlier, we don't want to parent out of fear. Like, none of us are trying to do that. And so to figure out how to navigate that day to day is a lot.
Yeah, because Heather, you bring up a great point. It's that, so there's this innocence that I think we want our kids to have to some degree, right? You don't want to initiate a conversation too soon. You don't want to talk about the heaviness of something too soon. And so there's this dynamic of trying to figure out, when is it okay to share the story that we saw in the chat, right? Of just police misconduct and legitimate abuse, versus here are some scenarios, young son, young daughter, and this is why I'm having this conversation with you. There's all these, like you said, moving pieces that makes it more complex in order to kind of have a really good dialogue that doesn't spark, right? But we do know that these are real life situations that are happening. And so I just wanted to raise this point kind of in our final few minutes, is when you think about the innocence that you would want your children to have. Michelle, I'm gonna pick on you a little bit because we haven't heard from you that much tonight. But when you think about the innocence that you want your kids to have, where does that sit with you? Like, is innocence valuable, or is the knowledge, does the knowledge outweigh the innocence?
I think it depends. I think it goes back to knowing your child and knowing where they're at. At 4, I want to hold on to some innocence, a lot more than probably if Che was 15 or 16. Mommy, and my okay, honey. Shh, shh, shh. And so I think age is a factor. And I think that it's a journey to navigate systems all at once, right? So we were talking about all those other sectors, and I'm much more concerned about the education system and the way they'll treat my child because he's 4 and he'll be going into preschool this fall than I am him interacting with police right now. If he interacts with police, it's because of me or his dad or, you know, an adult around him and not him solely. And so there are just certain things that, you know, in a sense, that's less of a concern, him driving or him being in the car. But then you think about, like, if he gets into an elementary that has a liaison officer or, you know, community, whatever they call him, right? We know that they're there to, at the end of it all, police the children and make sure that they're not like super rowdy or whatever. Nothing happens within the school system itself. But then you have two systems that you have to navigate together. And so for me, it is a sense of wanting that innocence, but making sure that we give him hopefully enough knowledge so that he's able to pick up on those little pieces and those little things as they come along. So dad saying all police officers are people and some people are good and some people are bad, and that applies to police officers. Hopefully he'll catch on to that when he interacts with police officers. That's not good, right? Same thing applies to me with teachers and with principals, right? Because again, bus drivers, all those things are more top of the mind to me. And so in any sector, I don't care if it's police officers or doctors or teachers, primarily now at this stage in his life, I want to preserve the innocence that he has. And not just, you know, the hard no like Kellen had. I'm not going to do that. But I do want there. Yes.
Let me ask you this question, because you guys live in Minneapolis, right?
Yeah.
Did Che notice anything happening in the city around him? Did you guys have conversations that he was privy to? And G, you can answer too. It doesn't have to be
not I did not. And G can fill in what he thinks. We did not have those conversations with him. There were conversations amongst adults that were had while he was around, right? And I still caution, you know, about having conversations with him floating around. Because at the end of the day, it's difficult. Like, it's like, okay, so do I hold on to preserving you being just a kid? You are 4, go play outside, right? Or do I say, so there's lots going on in the community that we live in, because we literally live here. Things have happened directly here, right? In the last year specifically. So where's the balance? And I haven't found it yet. I ain't thought much about it because I'm literally stressing out about him going to school in a handful of months. That's a real thing for me right now. So we can put the like community policing and all those things on hold. We live a block away from a police training facility. That's a real thing, right? And so sure, I'm sure he's picked up on things. He hasn't said anything to me vocally. But again, to whoever said it earlier, kids are always watching and they're always hearing regardless. They're sponges, right? And so I know that there are things that are in him that he sees, that he hears. Nothing's come to the light in regards to him being verbal about it that I know of. I'm gonna go back on mute now.
So we're, as Michelle mentioned, we're in a unique place where we're half a block away from a police training facility, which is also where I went to elementary school. It's like the same building. It's a bizarre thing where they shut down the elementary school and made a police training facility. And so when they just had this recent set of protests, they barricaded it, so it's already like fenced in as a school would be, and then they came back around and made these cement barricades and then had a fence, a 12-foot fence with barbed wire on top. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but he mentioned something to me about it, like what's going on there, or why they do that, or not. It wasn't like a profound, he notices that the police are, but he noticed a change in his environment. He noticed that this thing that wasn't there before is now there.
What was your
I'm sure I said something to the effect of some people are scared. It was probably something, super sarcastic and flippant. I'm sure. I don't I talk to Che like he's a grown man. We've never like done like baby talk or none of that. So I tend to respond to him in the way that I would respond to Kellen or any of my people that are my age.
Thank you, G and Michelle, for talking about that. Heather and Charles, there was some things that took place in Seattle, right? Did your children see or notice anything? And if so, what was that conversation like, or how did you guys handle that? And we're at 7:30, so we will kind of wrap it up a little bit after this. I want to thank everybody for tuning in with this partnership with the African American Community Partnership Group of Lake County, as we've been talking about raising Black children in today's culture. Heather and Charles, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of time to kind of speak on an actual scenario, that happened surrounding you guys and your children.
So, I mean, for our children, some things that happened downtown Seattle, and they happen in different areas. Well, because that, one, the pandemic has been in play. And so we've been in the house. And the other thing is the kids don't really get exposed to what's going on as far as news and different things of that sort. Like I might watch every once in a while to check the weather. The conversations I didn't really have direct conversations about this incident happened downtown, but they know the culture of what is going on in the world and the community. And so that's, conversations that y'all might have had with our children.
I mean, I'm with G. I tend to be pretty direct with my kids as well. And if you hear some of them talk, it sounds a lot like me. So there are some things that I do, because some of these conversations I'm trying to be proactive. When I go out for a run, I know one day I had left my ID and my credit card, and I'm like, oh, I had to come all the way back to the house. And they were just like, well, why? And I took that moment to say, because we're Black and there's not enough Black people in this area. And if somebody, a police officer, were to stop mommy needs to have X, Y, and Z. So, again, the middle one took that, and really you could see that seed planted. But I think that that's part of what parenting is. Some of the stuff they're going to pick up on, and others you might fill in for them. And we have a 5-year-old, and I'm definitely thinking of like the education system and how he could be treated in a predominantly white area. That is top of mind for me as his beginning stages. But I also know that we're planting a seed when we talk to him about his self-worth. It hits different because we know why we're planting the seed in a certain way. We know that we put a little extra on it, and that one day he's going to figure out, well, why they do me like that? And so those are all seeds that we are intentionally and cautiously planting as parents.
Yeah, thank you both, Dowdy's G and Michelle, because he won't really tell me how to pronounce his last name. And Kellen, I appreciate the conversation, and I'm glad we ended it with I just talked to him, right? Like when the question was raised to me in the beginning of starting this whole dialogue and discussion, I'm like, well, don't you just talk? I feel like I just kind of answer questions as things are happening or things are moving along. I don't know that I overly prepare or overly, consider or think about it. So I'm glad that you guys kind of responded in that way and shared, like, this was a scenario, this is kind of how I responded. it was just kind of simply that, you know, because as people are really questioning, how do I do this? What's the right way or what's the wrong way? I don't really know that there's a right or a wrong way. I think we're just kind of living and we're trying to do the best that we possibly can. We're trying to educate, we're trying to tolerate, we're trying to respect, we're trying to build children with character that are functioning members of society and that are gonna make it home safe at the end of the night, right? Like, I kind of feel like that's what it is. So again, I want to thank those who joined us and watched us live as we had this conversation talking about raising our Black children in today's culture. Thank you for joining us and good night.